thank you. Special thanks to those who nominated me and eventually selected me for this honor. You know, it's really cool to follow my great-grandfather into this outfit. Joe Kirby was inducted roughly 70 years after he died. This is a lot more fun. You know, I've always supported my version of the mission of the Hall of Fame, which is to identify and celebrate elements of character in the lives of real South Dakotans that might be helpful, even inspiring to subsequent generations. I've had over a year to figure out where in the world I would fit on that equation. I finally landed on the virtues I learned in scouting: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, brave, obedient, brave, clean, thrifty, reverent. Did I get those right? In my case, I added persistent, and Arlene will explain that. If I've learned anything in my first 3/4 of a century here, it is that if you can stay on the right side of those virtues most of the time, you'll eventually find yourself in the right place at the right time to make something good happen. It started early for me. I was a junior in college in California when my parents abruptly canceled a long-planned weekend visit. This suddenly left me without a date for my fraternity's biggest party of the year that same weekend. Well, I begged to get on the list for blind dates from the women's college up the road, and I made it. Before we were halfway up to the barn dance — they do have barn dances in California — I found out that my cute, skinny California blind date was Arlene Wagner, whose dad and grandparents were from Wagner, South Dakota. And she had aunts, uncles, and cousins all over the bohemian enclaves of southeastern South Dakota. We celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary last September, so right place, right time indeed. The same good fortune happened to me many times in my career. No more blind dates. Probably most notably, though, in being able to lead the project to turn my old high school and my parents' old high school into the Washington Pavilion of Arts and Sciences in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. What we wound up with was a world-class performing arts center, a new home for our fine arts collection, and a new science and discovery center with an attached Omnimax. The process took 10 years and 2 months and involved my chairing the feasibility study, the election campaign, the largest fundraising campaign in our history, right on through the implementation and construction process. The toughest part was keeping two very distinct groups moving in the same direction for what seemed like an awful lot longer than a decade. One group was the business, professional, and political establishment of Sioux Falls, primarily men, a third of a century ago. The other was the various art groups in our city, primarily women at that time. Historical interactions between those two groups had not been pretty. The establishment thought that the arts folks would prefer that 95% of the city budget go to the arts and the other 5% to clear the snow so they could get to the arts. And the arts groups, on the other hand, thought the establishment's conception of performing arts ran toward Elvis concerts and visual arts toward their favorite comic strips. None of those impressions were incorrect, by the way. What enabled me to move these disparate groups together in the same direction was the fact that I had learned the trust of both by having one foot planted firmly in each group. I'd been very active in civic and professional issues, chairing the chamber at an early age, generally proving myself trustworthy not to let the artsies over-design and overspend on the pavilion. On the other hand, I'd attended virtually all the meetings through the 80s of the arts groups, focused on the need for a new performing arts center. So they trusted me not to let the establishment pull the rug out from under them as we built the Washington Pavilion. The process ended in the final quarter of the 20th century, 1999, with the spectacular opening of the pavilion's Performing Arts Center by the New York Philharmonic one weekend and Yo-Yo Ma the next. So if you're a student looking at my file next year or next decade or next century, here's the deal. If you stick true to the South Dakota virtues you learned at home, Sunday school, 4-H, scouting, you too will find yourself in a position, the right position at the right time to make something good happen for your family, your school, your town, maybe even your whole state. This is great. Thank you.